Hi, I'm Tim Daniels from THS Sporting Center, and you just bought the new Muzzy LXV. And as you've probably heard, some people have purchased this bow and haven't been happy with it. There's a manufacturer at this point has discontinued shipping any more of these out due to a power limb issue. I received these a couple of days ago and started playing around with one myself. I've shot one at least 30, 40 times now and have learned a little bit about it. Here's what you get though in the kit. A reel, arrow, a rest,
okay, let me just transfer you over there then.
a very well packed bow.
For sure. And see if she can turn it over for you. His health is not well and
It comes shipped on the medium setting. There is also a no let-off setting and a short setting. When I played around with it a little bit, I found out that the short setting seemed to be a little bit more of what I felt was good for this bow. It's something you have to be very careful of. I'm going to measure the draw weight where there's no knock or anything on it at this point. I'm just going to look at it real close here. Hold the bow sort of still, and then pull down nice and straight. $40 pounds. I'm going to go ahead and throw a rest on it. You know, at first when I got this, I thought Muzzy had put them all together wrong, and I think it was with the intent. They actually mounted it out front. I've seen other variances of this, and it's not a bad idea. Something that I'm not quite used to, but for people that have a shoot-through rest, it's worth at least trying. I think what it does is give you actually a better balance. The distance between the string and the rest, the greater that distance, the better the balance is, the less critical the knock is.
Okay, I just
I'm going to set this up so it's just slightly above 90. What I found with these bows is that they have a great deal of cable tension. A lot of force, or a lot of the pretension on this bow is right into these two cables that are just taut as a piano string. Also, they're dry. There's very little wax on these. A couple years ago, I started shooting a D-loop on my bow fishing bows. And the reason I did that is that I had knocks, even brass knocks that would clamp down as hard as it could be, would start slipping. And when I started shooting a D-loop, D-loops held much better. And one of the added benefits is that I could, at night, feel where they were at, so I could easily knock my arrow quickly without looking. I tie these D-loops fairly small because they're not intended to be actually shot with a release aid. They're just as a knock index. In the finished product, I would also put on slick fingers. Just to save some time, we're not going to do that right now. You hear the bows really quiet, but some of these that I've pulled out of the box, you get a lot of slide chatter. So this cable slide is actually pulling and jerking on some of these. Also, a couple of the other bows that we've opened, they've been missing the set screws in here on this cable guard. All right, right in the Muzzy instructions, they tell you not to use a bow press. And, dude, that's their instructions. I'm going to measure the power limb from a hinge to the other hinge, and it's slightly over 24 inches. At draw, now it is at or under 23 inches. So what I'm going to lightly do is I'm going to gently press the tip of this bow in enough to take this string off. The limb bolts on all the ones I've taken apart thus far do not have any lube in them, and they grind. They chatter all the way through. They, again, absolutely dry. There's no lube in there whatsoever. I've already set this press up so I know it'll fit this bow. Just putting enough force on it to snake the string off. And just to show you that, again, it does not have any more force than when you had it at full draw. This point to this point is 24 inches. So basically this has moved basically nothing as it related to being at full draw. Still a ton of tension on those. And just as a reference, I don't know if this will, I didn't try it before like this, but these are still really hard to turn out. Again, because the limb bolt itself going into the riser has very little lube too. So with no tension on the string at all, these things are still extremely difficult to back out. It's one of those things, don't do this either. But I'm going to do this because it's faster. Show you by example too what happens when you don't have lube in these limb pockets and you assemble them. You go like this, make sure it's in all the way, and see that aluminum coming out? That's from not having any lube in there. So what I'm trying to do is make sure the limbs are out equal amount, trying to take all the tension off to it. So what I want to do is switch it from the long to the short. The short's going to actually give it the most pre-tension as well. Oh, at this time too, I would replace this cable slide. Again, this cable slide is junk. Hello. I replace it with a machine Teflon slide. I've tried these on a number of the other bows and they would just work out way better. They don't chatter, they're a lot smoother, and some of the bows chatter really bad. It actually creaks. At this point though too, you're going to look at waxing these strings or these cables.
How you doing? Good. Hurry up, good. What can I do for you?
So they are absolutely in terrible shape. I'm going to put a little bit of tension on this to keep it in place. Fully synthetic wax. And I am going to wax the Jesus out of this. There's very little twist in the cables. So at this point, I'm going to make sure my cable guard does not have any wax on it. And is nice and super clean. Put these cables back on. easier said than done. There we go. And again, this bow has like next to no tension on it as far as the limbs, but yet these cables have a ton of tension on them. Use some white lithium grease. You want something that holds up fairly well. Afterwards, I'll wipe this down. I'm also going to put some on this bolt because this bolt does seem to be lacking any good lithium grease. What I'm doing is just turning this just barely enough to get this string on here. And again, just to show you, this has less tension on it than drawing the bow. Again, 24 inches, there's less than a eighth of an inch change in this power limb. So I'm putting very, very little pressure on these power limbs. The weight's turned down as far as it'll go safely and still have a bolt engagement. Tension is now onto the string. I want to make sure the string is on its groove and everything's in there properly. It is. Now we are on the short settings. Okay, so at this point you would have maybe possibly put slick fingers on your bow, and again, look how, again, I wouldn't shoot the bow, the limb bolts themselves are just vicariously holding on just past center to hold this on and hold this on, yet these cables still have a lot of tension on it. The string has very little. Alright, so what do I got to do here is we got to get some lube in these limb bolts. So again, I want to take the least amount of tension off these things just so I can pop them off and on. Just to be super crystal clear again, Muzzy tells you not to do this. Do not press this bow. And I'm not telling you to press it either. I'm just saying that this is what I do. If you're fool enough, if you're crazy enough to do what I do, then at least you know what you're up against. This is going way easier than it does out of the box. These things are actually turning. Some of these bows that we've opened out of the box, I cannot get them to move at all. I mean, they take even long extension, long 90s, and we can't get them to move all. These small hand keys are enough to move these enough to change the draw weight. So adding lube to the limb bolt, adding lube to the limb bolt receiver or limb bolt button. So I've basically maxed this out so they're both exactly the same. It's getting pretty hard to turn at this point. It seems to be that they go a little bit further, but not much.
The dimensions you wrap yours all up. So.
And that's really about it. They're both symmetrical in the amount of space that there is in both tips. All right, one of the things I learned is that last time here is that if you switch it from the long setting to the short setting, keep the draw stops in the exact same position, what'll happen is it'll go to 100% let off. At least it did in the circumstance we did before. So I have a person here to spot me just in case that does happen, because if it gets to full draw and it goes 100% let off, you can't just scoot one limb forward. It creates like a teeter-totter effect, which would be sort of dangerous. So here we go. I'm going to pull it back. I'm going to keep on pulling until it hits the draw stops, and there we go. That's 100% let off. See, actually, right now, I'm not even holding the string, and it's not going to go anywhere. So it's actually stuck here. Go ahead, push forward. So that's something you may want to avoid being by yourself. So what we need to do is adjust these out so it doesn't go to 100%. So what I'm doing is running these out an even amount so they both match up. This will be shortening the draw length and keeping it from going to 100% let off. All right, so now we should be good. This should be the draw stop should come into play, and it should work just fine. So what I'm going to do is just going to pull this back by hand first. Perfect. All right, so we got lead off, and it didn't go to 100%. I'm going to check my draw weight. It's 39 pounds.
Anyway.
Oh, great.
Back to you, that's your receipt. You gotta cut this with this here up, do a little bit of arts and crafts here.
And the draw length is, at this point, only about a half inch shorter. It's about 29 inches. A little bit less than that. It's about 28 3/4. The let off is more pronounced though. Definitely smoother.
Friday.
But I can feel that it's also not very fast. It's pretty slow. Unfortunately, actually, while I was doing this today, we ended up getting a call from Muzzy, and they were requesting all these bows back so they can service them properly and then get them refinished. You know, some people are going to ask, well, why go through the trouble of doing a small video clip on a bow that's being recalled? And my answer to that is that what they're going to do, or whatever changes they're going to make, are not going to possibly solve or change all the things in which that when people opened up these boxes came across. And this bow has lots of potential. Just unfortunately, there's just been some lack of due diligence. Perhaps the engineers, designed cables that were slightly longer, and somehow they were built slightly shorter in manufacturing. Same thing with the string. The brace height on this bow is 8 inches, just over 8 inches, which is way too long. You're losing out on power stroke. Again, the cables have way too much pretension on them, probably leading to limb failure or power limb failure. The bow in and of itself is really well done. And for the people that opened them up and had problems with them, I'd say those problems can be solved. It's just a matter of just taking the time to figure it out and do it. I look forward to shooting this bow again. We probably won't be able to shoot them again until 2020. But that being said, they're great bows, or they have the potential to be great bows.
Register display?
Yeah.